I'm here with my co-host, Michael Mapson, and we're here to bring you some really exciting legacy action today.
Yeah,
Mapson, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Doing good. You excited to see some legacy?
I'm always excited to watch my favorite format.
Awesome.
How about you?
Of course. I mean, I was looking at it after SCG Legacy in Philadelphia this last weekend, the 10K. I got to play a little bit of Blue Red Delver myself, but playing 9 rounds of Magic really isn't enough. So it's going to be excited to actually see a little bit more Magic right
Yeah,
now.
if there's anything I've learned about Magic tournaments, it's that they just make me want to play and watch more Magic. Like you'd think at the end of it, you'd be like, "Oh, I'm really tired. I want to be done with this." But at the end of it, I'm like, "God, that was so much fun. I just want to
Mhm.
do this, more of this, all the time."
Yeah. And we thankfully are getting some more opportunities to see live Magic. Obviously, we did see a lot of people playing Magic this weekend in person, and there are some actually people obviously doing some guerrilla coverage this weekend at the SEG. But we do have a team event for SEG Indy, I believe, coming up in a few weeks. So I'm kind of excited to kind of see people explore this metagame, especially in paper, just because we've been playing online so much. The decks that we see in paper and online are slightly different. So it'll be exciting just to see what people are thinking after SCG Philadelphia.
Yeah, definitely exciting. Those top eights were like, well, singular top eight, I guess, was kind of interesting. So it'll definitely be nice to see what sticks around, what doesn't.
Mhm.
Will like Food Chain make make a brand new resurgence after Mike top eighted, or like will Green White Depths players start dropping Mox Diamond?
I know. I did, that was a crazy deck list. With Ezra Christensen, I believe is his name.
Correct.
Playing that really interesting brew with no Mox Diamonds in the main deck. He had the one Taiga, which I guess actually was really good for his prismatic endings, but ended up taking down the event.
Yeah.
All right,
But
cool.
tonight, we do know what we're going to be commentating on. So maybe let's take a look at the deck list for tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are going to be seeing some Death and Taxes, which will be a deck I think that's near and dear to my heart. I know I'm a former Death and Taxes aficionado. So, what are you seeing in the Death and Taxes deck that is kind of the highlights for people who haven't seen the deck in action before?
Yeah. So, I mean, Death and Taxes is like a legacy deck that has been around for ages. It's basically always been there. So the newer builds are playing Yorion. Um, it looks like this player, Edward Beck, is more or less just copying the stock list. Urza Saga is, now the norm, but pretty cut and dry. Only one timeless dragon. I know some people are on two. Notably, we just got Neon Dynasty cards, so we get to play with one copy of Lion Sash. So I'm definitely excited to see if that comes up today.
Mhm. You also get two copies of the new Aganjo, and obviously the first one did see some play in the modern version of Death and Taxes, but I actually really do like the addition of Aganjo, the I guess the newest one in the Legacy deck.
Yeah, the Aganjos seem like they're going to be really good, especially against Delver. Having, I mean, obviously having a land that gets wastelanded is always going to be a little bit not the best, but just having, well, not free, but having uncounterable removal that kind of takes up a land spot, it's going to be so good. Helps with flood, helps with days and stuff. I think it's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, and like you always have that issue with like something like Caracas where you can't really have multiples. There are some situations where you kind of use it as a like a lotus petal because you need to get that third mana for your Sanctum Prelate or your Skyclave Apparition. But the nice thing about a Ganjo being able to channel it is actually a really cool variation on what we've been seeing with legendary lands.
Yeah. So round one, we are going to have Death and Taxes like we're talking about, but it's going to be going up against Oops All Spells.
Which is like, if you're talking about really interesting matchups, this is one of the ones I think has a lot of tension to it, right? Because Death and Taxes is so good at locking down the board and controlling certain elements, especially with things like Skyclave Apparition. That doesn't really do much in this matchup, though. They're going to be really leveraging Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, to stop this really quick, fast deck that you're seeing here. Obviously, if you haven't seen this deck before. What's Oops All Spells trying to do in the first couple turns?
Yeah, so basically, what Oops All Spells is trying to do in the first couple turns is kill you on the first turn, preferably.
Yeah,
Um, this is arguably the fastest deck in the format. It's all about just trying to get your opponent dead. Up, looks like the action has started.
awesome. All right, well, we'll see who's on the play here. It looks like uh, they're resolving mulligans right now.
Yeah. So if you are in this matchup, it's like especially important to be on the play if you're the Death and Taxes player, right? I mean, Thalia is the biggest game you have, but Thalia can't come down until turn 2. So it's like you kind of have to hope your opponent can't kill you on 1, and then you're able to resolve it on turn 2.
So it looks like Free Falling starting off with a Plains into an Aether Vial, a really solid start for the Death and Taxes deck.
Yeah, I'm not loving that start if I'm on the Oops All Spells side, but it's not the end of the world. And Slasher had a mulligan, but he's really close to a hand that just kills, right? Like he just needs one black source, and this hand is good to go. And one of the things that's so great about this matchup is you're not worried about something like Force of Will or Daze.
Mm-hmm. Well, to keep in mind too, the Summoner's Pact does have the ability to get Wild Canter for you. So as long as you have a green source, that does give you access to a black source. Obviously, the great cost of having to pay for Pact the next turn if you don't win.
That's true. That's true.
So it looks like an actually really interesting play by Slasher, not playing the Timber turn Timber Symbiosis tapped on the first turn. Any reasoning to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really heads-up play. Like we said, this hand is so close to going off. Any Chrome Box gets you there, Lotus Petal. I mean, basically anything gets you there. The issue with playing out the Turn Timber Symbiosis as a land is if you put it out there, Wasteland, Rishadan either one of those can just keep you off of comboing. So that would be, obviously less than ideal.
Slow hand from Free Falling here. Pays 3 mana to put Urian into their hand. Urian obviously just a huge addition to that Death and Taxes archetype.
Yeah. So Slasher drew the Simian Spirit Guide here, so I kind of expect to see him try to go off.
Yeah, absolutely. We see him cast a Summoner's Pact. Pretty sure I'm going to get a Wild Cantor. There we are. Plays a Turn Timber to cast our Wild Cantor. I'm assuming it's going to be making black mana for us. Cast Dark Ritual. Exiles that Elvish Spirit Guide and cast Bellshrewd Spy, which is one of the two cards you see that allow this deck to do its mill my whole deck strategy.
Yeah, so this game is over. I have to say, I'm a little bit surprised Free Falling didn't mulligan to a hand that had Thalia or like had Wasteland on 1. And when you don't do that, this is definitely what happens in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're coming into the matchup, if you know what the deck list are, it definitely is something you would do. I think in game number 2, we're definitely going to see him aggressively trying to find something like that. But I think for round 1, he wasn't aware of the deck list yet, so we can definitely inform our decisions going forward. Sideboard here, we do have obviously Urian in the Death and Taxes board. You have Peacekeeper, Containment Priest. You see Council of Judgment, some Surgical Extractions, a Pithing Needle, a Soul Guide Lantern, 4 copies of Leyline of the Void, and 2 copies of Serenity. What are you interested in boarding in here as a Death and Taxes player?
Personally, I'm interested in boarding in most of this. The way that Death and Taxes has been constructed for quite a while now is to beat the Fair decks game 1 and then kind of have a very large sideboard to beat combo decks. Peacekeeper, pretty useless here. Council's Judgment, also not great here. The rest of this is like pretty good. I guess it's a Pithing Needle. Pithing Needle's not great, but I mean, you could bring it in and name, I can't remember which one sacks, whether it's Balustrade Spy or...
Undercity Informer.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, I mean, most of this is pretty good. Like, Leyline obviously stops the deck that uses the graveyard to combo. Soul Guide Lantern, same thing. Pithing Needle, like we said, stops Undercity Informer. Surgical Extraction, just hitting Thassa's Oracle ends the game, or hitting Narcomoebas. Containment Priest does a pretty good job. So basically, everything comes in. I think you can cut cards like Solitude and Swords to Plowshares. I know some players might argue if you have enough Swords to Plowshares, you can like tag the Narcomoebas while the rest are on the stack and hope to stop them from getting off the Dread Return. I think that's kind of a rough strategy. It means you're playing cards that you don't want to play, and you have to draw multiples of them for them to be good. So don't love that. Definitely taking out removal.
Cool. So we're looks like we're in ready for game two. Free falling does have to take a mulligan. It looks like Slasher has a pretty decent hand though. So I think free falling's gonna need a pretty good hand if they're gonna have a chance here.
Yeah, Slasher's hand is pretty good. It is notably missing like a Thoughtseize effect. I think one of those would make this hand perfect. Like we said, Death and Taxes has a lot of hate that they bring in post sideboard. So getting to go off turn one is really powerful, but if you can't like clear the way for something like a surgical extraction, that's going to be an issue. And this is going to be an issue too.
This is the hand. Yeah, looks like free falling mulligan down to 3 cards. I kept Leyline, Plains, and Surgical Extraction. So I think the odds of us getting a quick combo kill here is going to be pretty slim. What
Yeah.
if you're Slasher? What are you thinking? What are you trying to do here?
So the the first thing I'm doing is probably just playing out my creatures and hoping to just attack them, right? Like these cards that our opponent has are very strong here. That's a funny draw.
Mhm.
Um, but if free falling is on one land in a ley line, like that's not going to stop him from dying to just tutus.
Yeah.
It's not a great plan, but it is a plan. And then also, it's definitely possible that we have something like Nature's Claim in our deck post board that we're able to answer the ley line and try to go off. I mean, and I know that it's not going to work, but that could also be the plan from Slasher. But I really do think Slasher's just going to try to get in there with the beats.
Yeah. We see Undercity Informer coming to play. And it's the 2/3. We actually see the strategy a lot in modern. I always think of where the Resident Beast comes down against the Dredge player, and they're just like, "Oh, well, here's a 3/3 prize in Malcolm. Can you beat this? Here's a Stinkweed Imp. Best of luck." And we're able to race. So interested to see how this game goes. Undercity Informer is getting in for 2.
I have to say, somewhere out there, XJ Cloud is like yelling in rage right now, seeing the mismatched planes,
Mm-hmm.
just somewhere screaming his guts out, furious.
Yeah. You probably don't need the snow-covered plains and the plains, but to each their own, right?
Sometimes you just need that 6/6 predict value.
Yeah, absolutely. So free falling ends up drawing a flicker with, but we are a little bit away from that. But when that does come down, that seems like it might be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it still just dies to the beats. It takes one out on the way, but
Mhm.
it's not as scary as something like a 3/3 would be.
Yeah, definitely. But the Flickerist does have the ability to, take out a land. I guess our land DFC when it comes in, so that might be good. We do see a Simian Spirit Guide hitting the battlefield, and Free Falling plays a Mother of Runes to join the fray as well.
I think this Mother of Rings is actually going to be shockingly effective against a deck that doesn't play removal, right? Because now the creatures aren't going to be able to get through. They're actually just going to get brick walled. That's going to be quite an issue.
Big attack for 6 coming in here. Free Falling down to 8. Soul Guide Lantern. And this is one of the concerns I always have with this kind of matchup is you end up with these draws where you definitely need the graveyard hate, but now we see whether the okay, and able to cycle this, draw another mom. Okay, that's something. But the 2 Mother of Runes are not, or 2 surgical extractions are not really doing anything at this point. Kind of dead draws. Ooh, and a
Hmm.
Force of Vigor. That's not a bad draw. The mom
Huh.
gets in there and protects herself. Free falling down to 8.
Down to
Down to
4.
4. See, a Ganjo. And this Ganjo, I think, is actually going to be pretty decent here. Comes into play on tap, which I think is one of the most underrated things about these cards, right? Just as actual lands this cycle. They come into play untapped. But it's
Yeah,
going
the
to
fact that
allow.
they come into play untapped is kind of nuts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and normally we see something like this come into play tapped or have some sort of restriction, but being able to cast Flicker with this turn is going to be pretty good.
Yeah, so I imagine Free Falling is debating between Flicker Wisp and just playing the second Mother of Runes here.
Yeah, I mean, you're down to 4. So if you end up playing the Flicker Wisp here, you're probably going to have to lose something, right? I guess you can use the Flicker Wisp to trade. The Mom can come in and gets protected, so you can block the next turn, but you're losing the Mom for sure. I think that's still the right play, though.
I actually think you have to play the Flicker Wisp. I think trying to maximize your mana is pretty important here. And like you said, you're going to lose one of the creatures here, but at least you're taking out one of their creatures at the same time. So, you are going to lose a bit of life, but then the following turn, you have the Mom, and then the Flicker Wisp can take out another creature. So if you draw any 2-drop, then all of a sudden you're in a winning position. Notably, it does turn off the surgical extractions, though. So actually, if Slasher fires off this Force of Vigor here, then he should be able to win on his turn, right? Because he can attack, put the opponent down to 2. Well, I guess he doesn't necessarily just straight win. It kind of depends on if Free Falling makes the correct block.
We do see that Force of Vigor make the Leyline of the Void hit the battlefield. I'm assuming we're just having an attack incoming here.
Well, but the thing is, if you attack and the Undercity Informer gets blocked, I think you lose from Slasher's position. But at the same time, you kind of also have to attack. It's really awkward here. Like, I definitely think there's a delicate dance here.
Mm-hmm. Slasher.
I think if I'm Slasher here, I'm attacking with the Spy and the Simian Spirit Guide, but I don't know. That's, it's got its own list of issues there. But I think that's the correct attack. It's very tough to say.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the idea of attacking with everything and making the Mom get in there, and because the Mom is really the issue from the attacking standpoint, and we do see Slasher just attack with everything. Flickerist blocks Undercity Informer, Mother of Ruin blocks
Well,
Simeon Spirit
yeah,
Guide.
this actually does work out. I don't know why in my head it didn't, because you just sack now. So if they have the surgical, they're going to die when they after damage is resolved.
Mm-hmm. We see that activation here, Undercity Informer targeting Slasher. Whole graveyard's going to hit the bin. Narcomoebas on the stack. And those surgicals are going to be kind of an interesting spot, right? Because you can't actually activate here because of that 2 damage coming in. So we see the Narcomoebas come in one by one by one. Has to be one of my favorite animations. That just the Narcomoebas coming in. It has to be either Narcomoeba or Pressed Amalgam. Those triggers stacking up. Mother Runes comes in to protect herself. Free Falling falls to 2. And now those surgical extractions are turned off. You can't play them anymore this game. Cabal Therapy is going to be activated. Trigger our bridge from below. Get a zombie. However, I don't think we're going to need it.
No, I mean, the main point is we're getting rid of our own Dread Return so that we can actually win the game from Slasher's side.
Okay,
Yeah, this was a weird game.
well, this is it's just a thing that comes up a lot with these kind of decks. You end up getting your plan A shut down so hard that you have to pivot, and the better players have the ability to pivot when they're hit these different roadblocks. And we kind of saw that here. This is in a lot of ways, a shining example of what you're supposed to be doing when you're facing this kind of graveyard hate as a graveyard strategy.
I love it. Free Falling's going out on their own terms.
Absolutely, gotta love it. Well, congratulations to Slasher 21. That was a interesting match to watch. I'm really glad we got to see that for the first one. Going into it, I really thought that Death and Taxes had a better shot there.
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting Slasher to win the whole time. If I'm being honest, I think that game was actually much more competitive than I would have expected, especially considering it was a mulligan to three. Like, if
Yeah.
you just imagine that Free Falling had had a couple more cards in hand, I think they would have gotten there, right? And it
Yeah.
almost doesn't even matter what those cards were, even if they just had like an extra land and any creature, essentially. It doesn't even need to be one of the good ones, but like, especially if it's a Thalia, I think that game's over a long time ago.
And I'm interested to see what happens in that match if Free Falling keeps Leyline and double land, right? Like maybe they don't need the land in Surgical. Maybe having an extra mana source, giving yourself an out to draw, that Flicker Rift and get that into play a turn faster, would have changed the pace of the game a decent amount. So something that something to think about. We have a backup match coming in right now. I'm excited to see this one as well. We see a 4-color control versus land. Can you give us a quick rundown of what? Well, actually, I apologize. Looks like we have Urza Saga and Ancient Tomb on the battlefield, passing back to our 4-color control opponent. Especially Tomb with a 1 of. Okay, the one tomb. I really like the position right now. I think from the lands player. Um,
Yes. So land, I mean, Land's is favored in general in this matchup, I think, and Urza Saga is obviously very good against control decks. Historically, Land's always been favored against the fair blue decks. I will say, there was actually a pretty big thread going on Twitter earlier today about what matchups do you want to be on Lands versus which matchups do you want to be on green white taps, which is the deck I play a lot of. And this is really the matchup where I want to be on Lands over green white. Lands just it has this way of going long and really generating a lot of value without casting a lot of spells, right? And something like Life from the Loam is very difficult for these control decks to deal with. Just recurring Urza Saga turn after turn, especially if you're able to do something like copy Urza Saga with Thespian Sage and then turn your Thespian Sage into a forest. Now they can't wasteland it, they can't like bounce it with Teferi, and now you're just able to pump out a token every turn. And then, meanwhile, the control deck is clogged up with cards like Prismatic Ending and Swords to Plowshares, and they just don't really have a great way out of that.
but we do see a construct coming in at the end of turn, another one during the main phase. Mox Diamond coming in, which I think is a good thing for the lands player, gives them access to some colored mana. Wasteland takes down a Tundra, and we see a 3/3 construct coming in.
What I find interesting about current iterations of this matchup is always that the control decks play such a greedy mana base now.
Mhm.
Historically, you're used to seeing like one Tundra, maybe two Tundras, one Volcanic Island, and then like 6 or 7 basics. And now we have these super, super greedy piles that are playing just kind of a huge pile of duels. And so Wasteland was always very ineffective against like decks like Miracles, and now against these new piles, Wasteland is actually a real card again, which I think is really nice.
Prismatic Ending tags the Mox Diamond. It's a pretty good hit here. Yeah, that is interesting too. And like you've seen so many cards coming in and out of the deck at this point. Obviously, it's something like Oko was recent, well, within the past 2 years, of course. We obviously saw Arkham Astrolabe, which was a huge addition to the archetype, which is now on the banned list. So now that we're looking at things that are in the deck, right? The big, I think, headliner in my mind is Uro, which on the front side, not too bad. You can cast that off a 2 basics and be perfectly fine. But when you start getting to the the double blue, double green on the uh, I keep wanting to call it flashback, but um, on it's when it comes into play the second time, now it's a little harder to do off basics while also casting your prismatic endings on turn 1 or 2, your swords of plowshare. So yeah, the duel's definitely a little bit more necessary than they were before.
Yeah. There
And
is a long pause on this prismatic ending. I'm wondering what Capricioso is thinking about here.
it could be thinking about just the battlefield being uh, picked off one by one. I mean, that's what I'm thinking about right now. There was I mean, a couple turns ago they had, well, I guess last turn they had 6 power on the battlefield, and now they're going down to 1 in the Ancient Tomb, which does not feel nearly as good as it did, a minute ago.
Yeah. So I unfortunately we're having a bit of technical difficulties right now, so we don't have access to Capricioso's hand. But I'm really curious what's in there right now. Wondering if we have a good way of competing with the Sylvan Library that's going to be coming down from IOK.
Oh, and that's a
Second
very
Urza Saga is pretty good.
that is pretty solid. Urza Saga is definitely one of the big additions from MH2. I know Murktide Regent, Solitude, DRC has gotten a lot of the headlines, but I think Urza Saga is definitely the one in Modern and Legacy that's really, in my mind, had probably the largest impact. So we see the turn be passed back. Shark Typhoon is a draw, but we see that Sylvan Library finally hit play. And that hopefully should allow IOK to get a little bit of card quality here and try to draw into some lands, hopefully find an Uro, and try to put this game away.
I'm a huge Sylvan Library fan. I have to say, it is one of my favorite cards to resolve. I don't know how you feel about the card, but I just having it in play gives you those warm fuzzies.
I mean, I'm particularly fond of Sylvan Library. Not for the card. I've probably cast it like 4 times in my life, but I obviously like Sylvan Library a little bit after Eternal Weekend, so it's definitely a favorite card of mine.
I can't believe you've only cast it like 4 times. That would make me so sad. I cast that card every chance I get.
Well,
Pay
I
8
do too,
right away.
but it's not many times. I think I've cast it in like Rug Delver a couple times. Like that's basically it, and I've cast it in EDH. So not too many opportunities. I see an activation for a second construct here and an attack. Once again, just the amount of pressure you get from Urza Saga is just so impressive.
Yeah, and I'm feeling pretty good if I'm the lands player here, right? Like, even though my opponent has a Sylvan Library, they can't really afford to pay much life. Like, you have 4 power in play right now, but then next turn, you make a construct, and all of a sudden it's 6, and then your Saga resolves, and you get another artifact, and it's 8. So it's like, even if they pay 4 life, then they're dead on board. Obviously, IOK does have a swords in hand, but like the pressure is really, really big.
Yeah, I think with the draw of a volcanic, if you compare that up with something like an Uro, maybe I don't mind paying 4 life, drawing 1 card, being able to cast Uro and Swords to Plowshares in the same turn. That seems pretty decent, but I guess it depends really what comes off the Sylvan Library.
Okay, next question about Sylvan Library.
Mhm.
Do you prefer the original art or like the new version that we see on the screen right now?
I am a big fan of the original. I think the original is like classic. I don't think there's an issue with the current one. I also like the Commander Green version. Uh, that one I think has grown on me too, just because I've seen that one probably the most. So we see a
Know
volcanic
I've
going
seen it,
down
but I
top.
don't know that one off the top of my head.
It has like I want to say like a greenish, like an orangish glowing figure, kind of popping out of the library.
Okay. Yeah, I really like this one, but I also really like old frames. So I
Mm-hmm.
kind of wish that we could get like the happy medium.
Mm-hmm. I mean, hopefully the Eternal Weekend painting ends up on a card at some point. I just think that beautiful art by Raul Vitali. So hopefully we see that one. It looks like IOK put back 2 lands and kept a third. So the Misty Rainforest is going to be came into play, which is actually pretty good, right? That allows them to shuffle away the other 2 lands and get a fresh look for the next turn. We see a construct coming into play off of the Urza Saga, fetching up a expedition map, which gives them a lot of options. If you're the lands player here, what are you getting off of the expedition map?
Urza Saga number 3.
That's what I would do too. We do see an exploration coming into play here too, which is just a huge addition that hopefully will allow them to chain some life from the loams and get back some Urza Saga that way too. So I imagine there's going to be an attack incoming for 8 here. If you're IOK, are you interested in trying to play a 1/1 shark and block with that, or are you interested in trying to just swords and maybe just cycle your shark that way?
It's awkward. I don't think that cycling the Shark Typhoon really does anything. I think you have to get stuff off the board. So because of that, I'm leaning towards the Swords to Plowshares. But also, I don't know that that is a winning line.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure what the winning line here is. Right? I'm not sure if they have something like Dress Down in their deck post board. Like if they have Dress Down, then I'm probably on Cycle Shark Typhoon because that really feels like you're only out. They probably do have it, so the cycling the shark probably does make sense. But if you don't have Dress Down or like Engineered Explosives, then I think you have to Swords.
So we see the cycle for a 1/1 shark, which is going to go into combat. Flying Sharks versus Constructs is not a good movie, but it is a good block here. Pass the turn back to IOK. They end up drawing a Surgical Extraction off of the cycle, but I guess it really comes down to what they draw off the Sylvan Library this turn. We do see one Prismatic Ending. That's a good start. And at least a basic a tropical island. I mean, if I'm IOK, I'm very happy drawing seeing Prismatic Ending here. You definitely need a little bit of removal, right?
Yeah, so having the Swords and the Prismatic Ending, you get to tear it down so that there's only 2 power in play. So that is, pretty big. Definitely a strong play. That being said, Capricioso can just go ahead and find another Urza Saga and get the get the threats going away or right away again.
So if
I'm not sure if you want to do that end of turn or not.
mhm,
Oh well, definitely not because currently you have lethal in play.
yeah, so we see the turn pass back to our land player and attack for 6, and this is lethal unless they obviously IOK has the Swords of Plowshare to prevent that. Capriccio so goes back up to 15. IOK looks like they're going to go down to 4 life. And now we're in this situation too. If you're the land player, I think you have to crack the expedition map, but I wonder how um the position if you're IOK, do you have to surgical here and take the other sagas?
Probably because I don't think you're beating another one.
Mm. My only
I
thing
don't
to
think that's why surgical extraction is in the deck, but it's definitely relevant. And I'm surprised to see him not go for it.
yeah.
Um, I was going to say, and if it does get surgical, you can then pivot, get a wasteland, and then you can keep them on like 1 land essentially here, and that also seems really strong.
I was gonna say too, you could actually just get another Bethesda and take out that Sylvan library, get rid of that issue, and cut off your
I don't
options.
think you're worried about the Sylvan Library if you're on the land side here.
Hmm.
Your opponent's at 4 life. They can't like yes, they're getting some card filtering, but they're not really like they can't get any kind of card advantage off of it. So
Mhm.
I just don't think that that's where you want to be. You don't want to give them more mana to maneuver out of stuff.
We see an endurance coming in from Capriccio. I think that is going to wrap this up here. Just
Yeah,
because
I'm
the additional
surprised
3
to see that
power.
one resolve.
Yeah, I think you needed to force of will that.
I mean, it's just lethal unless we're missing something here.
I don't think so. In comes the 2/2 construct, the endurance. IOK looks at their endurance. I think they thought they had double green.
It's definitely possible.
Yeah. And we see surgical extraction. Targeting an Earth Saga, it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like that play. Just getting information about how your opponent sideboarded on the way out.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully we see something. If you're the lands player too, I'm interested what kind of things that they boarded in here. 'Cause obviously, there's always a good amount of information when you see somebody's hand in somebody's deck, and I wonder how that's going to inform IOK for the third game. Yeah, Capriccio wins this game. And we're going to go back to sideboarding. It looks like so. Lands Capriccio being Dom Harvey here. If you're looking at Dom sideboard, we obviously saw a copy of Endurance that came in. What else do you think from the sideboard came in here?
So like you said, we've established endurance came in. There's definitely an argument for bringing in punishing fire just as a way to the game. That being said, I don't love it. I think it's too slow. But historically, punishing fire has been good against control decks, just
Mhm.
a little bit less so when Uro is involved. Um, for Pyroblast, some number of those definitely came in. It's possible some number of Leyline came in as an answer for Uro. I would doubt it, but it's definitely a possibility. Um, Choke seems pretty good, and Graka seems fine. Definitely serviceable.
Mhm. Especially when you tutor it up off of your expedition map. So that is definitely something interesting. And notably, you do see the Sylvan Library art I was mentioning before with the glowing orange figure in Dom's main deck. But let's switch to four-color control here. And once I big fan of this deck. What are you bringing in here?
If I am on this, whoa, is that a questing beast?
It is
I'm bringing that in. I'm not saying that this is the matchup that you're supposed to bring it in. I'm just saying I'm bringing it in because I'm playing it every chance I get.
naturally.
Um, I'm probably bringing in Meltdown to deal with these constructs. They have been a huge pain in the butt.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, the surgicals we saw, and that's really it. One of my concerns with this build of control, like we talked about, very heavy on non-basics. So you can't play any of the old hammers that this deck used to play, such as Blood Moon or Back to Basics, which does make my life easier as somebody who loves putting Merit Lage into play, but definitely not great for Michael Danielson here.
I feel like the Hydroblast coming in too, it tags something like a Valakut Exploration. Maybe not the biggest
I
worry.
don't think Dom was on Valakut Exploration, was he?
I'm not sure, but at the very least, Michael doesn't know that. Once again, it's close deck list, so I think it's something you have to be concerned about as a opposing control player.
If you play through games 1 and 2 without seeing it, I just don't account for it, right? Like most of the lands list nowadays aren't even on that card to begin with.
I do like the just looking at the main deck here. I really do like the um, addition of endurance to the legacy format. Obviously, it does tend to ruin my delirium and block my 3/3s now 1/1. But I think endurance has really made these control decks a little bit more uh, threatening, giving them a little bit of interaction while also actually providing a clock in some games.
Yeah, that card is nuts. That card is just like very, very good. I do think it's a little bit overrated, but it's still a very strong card. Like every time you cast it against a Delver player who hasn't seen it before, they're just like, "Oh, like this is really bad for me." It's like, yeah, and it's just kind of got a lot of versatility. Like I don't want to say versatility, but it's just randomly useful.
So our case starts off with a tropical island. Pretty decent hand here. Ability to Force of Will, pitching a Brainstorm if they'd like to, while still being able to cast an Uro on turn 3. Big fan. Capriccio has the Grove the Burn Willows on turn 1, passes it back. Okay, untap, play a second Trop, and plays a Sylvan Library. This seems like a pretty solid start for IOK here.
Yeah, absolutely. Mulliganing is rough, but Sylvan Library is where you want to be, especially
When
when
you're able
paired
to.
with Uro.
Exactly.
Yeah, every time I see Grove of the Burnwillows in play, I can't help but chuckle. Reminds me of like my favorite moment that I ever saw on a Twitch stream. Back when Carmen Handy did not work for Wizards yet, she was streaming with Jadine Klimperins, and they were on Death Shadow, and their they were at 12 life, and their opponent had a Grove of the Burnwillows and tapped it, and Death Shadow moved to the graveyard, and they hit undo, and the Death Shadow came back. They tapped the Grove of the Burnwillows, and it died. And the opponent just did this like 5 times, just making the Death Shadow go in and out of play. And it was really like the best thing I've ever seen.
So funny. We see a Gamble and an Exploration coming into play. If
Yeah,
I had
this
to
is
make a guess, I think that's what you gambled for, right?
quite possibly. This is like a perfect start for lands.
Hmm. I'm actually a little bit surprised. I thought we were going to see a Force of Will in that Exploration.
Yeah, I think different players, some players are on the mindset of force it, and other players just say, they're going to get their lands into play sooner or later, anyways. Hold the force for things that are really going to give them card advantage. Cards like Sylvan Library or Valakut Expiration, like we were talking about earlier.
I think we're going to
Personally,
see
I'm on the mindset that you should force expiration, but
I think we're about to see a really sweet play here. Oh man, okay. I was hoping that we were going to see the Uro come into play, put the land into play before the second trigger that sacrifices it comes into play. Pay 1 mana with the um Bezeju and get that turn 1 naturalized to get that Urza Saga off the board.
yeah, that could have been good.
Man, I mean, once again, I'm really hesitant to see how good Bezeju is going to be in this format. I have wildly high and low expectations for it, but that would have been really sweet. But we do see the Euro come into play, put in a tropical island. It seems like we're at IOK's end step, and we're passing back to Capriccio.
Hmm.
Main
Notably, Capriccioso is running low on time. We're really going to have to put some pep in our step to end this matchup on time.
Yeah, Lance does have the ability to win quickly, but does have the ability to grind as well. So gotta gotta pick the right gear here. I am interested actually. The combination of Urza Saga and Thespian Stage. Can you explain that interaction for us?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite things to do, despite the fact I don't do it very much. Um, for those who don't know the way that this works, Thespian Stage copies Urza Saga. Now you have an Urza Saga with 0 counters on it, right? But when you hit your main phase, it'll gain the ability to tap for colorless mana, an ability it already had, um, but it'll gain it again, and will always have that ability, and then will, on your next turn, go to chapter 2, and it will gain the ability to make a construct, and it will keep that forever. And then on your third turn, it will gain it'll sacrifice, right? And you can wait until that triggers on the stack, copy something else with Thespian Stage. So the trigger will resolve. You'll still be able to fetch for something, but now your Thespian Stage is a basic forest or a taiga or a tropical island or whatever else, but it retains the ability to tap for 2 mana. I mean, to tap, pay 2 mana and make a construct.
Brutal sequence here. So we saw the Urza Saga get hit by the Ganjo. It seems like they found a Taiga, which is not a bad draw. They cast a Life from the Loam, trying to get their Urza Saga back, but that got hit by a Force of Negation, which is probably two of the worst things that could happen for you if you're trying to develop your board here in a game you need to win quickly.
You know, even though the force negation was able to tag the life from the loom, like if I'm lands here, I really don't feel bad. We don't know about the wasteland in our opponent's hand yet. We have the Thespian stage Urza Saga thing available to us, like I was talking about. Like this is actually a very strong position, especially with this endurance coming down and stopping Uro from coming back. Like we have a fast clock and the ability to grind it out. I'm definitely feeling pretty good.
Absolutely. So IOK gets a turn back. Looks at 3 cards off the Sylvan Library. Looks like we have
There's
2 Swords and a Brainstorm.
a lot of Swords to Plowshares.
Yes, it is. And looks like we're taking one of them with us. Wasteland comes in and takes care of the Urza Saga. And it looks like we're going to have the creatures covered with that source to Plowshares. Are you interested in getting rid of both the creatures right now, or just maybe save one for later?
So with the Thespian stage in play, I think you kind of have to try to keep one. You might need to tag a Merit Lage, and now you have this dress down that can tag the Urza Saga token if you need to. And also, right now it's just a 1/1, so
Mhm.
a 1/1 is not particularly scary. So I would definitely let it stick around. I'm really not trying to take the hit for 3 though, because if Punishing Fire is in post board, it's going to very quickly end the game.
So we see IOK cast the Swords of Plowshare on the Endurance. And I am interested to see if we're going to see a follow-up dress down, or maybe just take the one and wait till the end of turn.
I mean, Capricioso has 3 cards in hand. Uh, have they missed a land drop? They haven't missed a land drop. I I don't know. I have mixed thoughts on the dress down.
But we do see IOK cast the dress down here, gets rid of the Construct token. Capriccio cast Gamble here. Looks like they discarded a Life from the Loam. Oh, shucks. That's the worst thing that could have happened. And that dress down is going to go back to the graveyard. So Sylvan Library trigger on the stack for IOK. Hands currently Force of Will, 2 Swords to Plowshares. What are you hoping to see here if you're IOK?
I don't know, honestly. I mean, I guess Uro.
No.
I feel like that's always what you're hoping to see. Really, is Uro. Card just wins a lot of games. It gets you out of a lot of sticky situations, right? Like, I mean, gaining 3 life. We joke about life gain being such a bad ability, but when it's tacked on to basically anything else, then suddenly it's good. I don't think I need to explain to anybody why Uro is a good Magic card, but yeah, it's definitely what I'm looking to see here.
So Capriccio is going to dredge, get back that Life from the Loam, start getting some cards here. But it looks like IOK is not okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, life from the loam resolving basically ends the game. Uh, you're at 5 life. Urza Saga is going to kill you very quickly.
That Force of Will is going to come down, get rid of that. Life
I
from the
think this is
Loam.
going to be a
Oh,
Pyroblast.
Pyroblast. I really like the Pyroblast. I think Pyroblast in this format is insane, and that it is going to get that Urza Saga back, and I guess we have some constructs in our future.
Uh,
So Sylvan Library sees a Surgical Extraction, a Savannah, and a Brainstorm. Interesting spot. Do you Surgical Extraction the Life of the Loam here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a tough game otherwise. But we'll see. We're in the upkeep. And if they're going to pull the trigger on that Surgical Extraction, it needs to happen now.
So I guess one of the downsides to doing it is it does put you at 3 life, which is dangerous. But I also don't think you're winning games where the life from the loam is resolving multiple times. That being said, life from the loam is at its scariest when it's paired with exploration, which we don't have. Um, but I still think it's a concern.
I mean, I guess the big fear now is, do I have to worry about that Punishing Fire? If it is, the game's over. Uh, but if not, you get to fight on another day. So Let's see what the social attraction does. Life and Limb's gone. We're still playing, so I think we're in the clear if we're IOK. Counter goes on to the Earth Socket, so now we are in prime construct making territory. Plays a Wasteland and passes the turn back. Draw off the Sylvan Library is a Brainstorm, a Beseju, and a Savannah. So the Beseju is going to stay here.
The Beseju is actually really good here.
I mean, I think you need some way to get rid of the Urza Saga. Oh, but we see the Punishing Fire.
Yeah, well, that is what we call game over.
Yeah. So it looks like our lands player then is gonna very likely win this game 2-1. Oh, actually, that's really interesting. The Beseju. Oh, I guess it doesn't particularly matter. Yeah. They went for the Beseju on the Grove of the Burn Willows to prevent getting the Punishing Fire back. However, we are not making it. No construct. We're making construct now. They're at 1.
Yeah. We're going to make a construct and we're going to turn the Thespian Sage into an Urza Saga.
Mm-hmm.
And this should beat an opponent with 0 cards in hand.
Yep. That does not seem good enough. If we can get something off this Brainstorm, not good enough. Everything's just a little bit too late here. Ura would have been a huge addition. You're not that lucky right now.
So notably, Capricioso has less than a minute on their clock. There's still a chance that IOK wins this. Now,
Non-zero chance for sure.
it's not most people's favorite way to win, but it is a way.
Mm-hmm. We see the Wasteland come into play here. Take care of the Thespian Stage turned Urza Saga. Pass the turn back to Capricioso. And I think we're just going immediately to combat here. 0 cards in hand for the opponent. 2-2. And we are done here. 2-1 for our land player. Really interesting match there.
Yeah, I mean, I think most matches that involve lands where they're not just getting flattened by a combo deck tend to be interesting games. Like, the deck is, even though a lot of people complain about it, I think it's very fun to watch in action. It does a lot of cool, interesting things. It can pivot in a lot of different ways, like we were talking about there with, like, Urza Saga could just make a bunch of tokens, but you could also just go off with Punishing Fire. There's just a lot of angles of attack. And one of my favorite things about lands is you can just customize it so much, right? Like, this version is red-green, but you can also play blue and include things like Ipnu Reveled and Flusterstorm or Slogurk the Overslime.
Yes, absolutely.
There's just so much you can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was really interested to see, too. You saw the 4-color control player had access to things like Dress Down. They had the access to the Beseju, which really did a great job cleaning up a lot of the more dangerous cards out of the land deck. But even with all those interaction points, it was still really difficult for them to keep them off all of the different angles of attack that lands is able to present.
Yeah. So I feel like trying to 1-for-1 lands often doesn't work out. I think having lands that kind of double as spells is inherently very powerful. I know that's something you and I have personally talked about a lot, and it really shapes a lot of the decks I tend to play. I think, honestly, attacking the graveyard is one of the better ways to attack lands. And if you can keep, the graveyard and essentially the lone plan contained, then, your meltdowns do become more powerful. But, like, you have to keep in mind, like, Urza Saga, your opponent is getting basically 3 spells out of it every time. So even just recurring it once is oftentimes very brutal.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the land quality we've seen in Modern and Legacy has just increased tenfold. I mean, we see things like Field of the Dead. We obviously are seeing Beseju now and Urza Saga. But like things like Dwarven Mine, Mystic Sanctuary, seeing playing Delver now in Legacy. just being able to rebuy a lot of these spells, and like that's just things printed within the past 2 or 3 years. You start putting that with the Grove of the Burn Willows, and the ability to lock out your opponent with something like Glacial Chasm, Death Being Staged with Dark Depths. Obviously, big fans of Dark Depths here. Um, just that ability, and like you said, the ability to reset and rebuild quickly and efficiently when you're looking at things like exploration in your deck and Life Alone. It's a lot for some decks to handle.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so while we're here and we don't necessarily have something that we have to talk about right now, we're going to take a second and do some chilling. If you're watching this right now, you probably like Legacy and watching competitive Magic in general. So make sure you guys tune in on Friday to this channel. Anurag is going to be doing something especially cool. He's teaming up with Jarvis Yu and Andreas Peterson. They're going to run a nice little not 3 person, an event featuring 3-person teams. It's going to be kind of a high stakes event. The teams just got announced today. We've got some pretty heavy hitters. I don't know if you saw the list.
I haven't seen it yet. I saw the announcement. I saw the prizes up for stakes. I'm really excited, especially seeing high stakes with Modern, Legacy, and Pioneer.
Yeah, so let's see. The first team was Team Sunny Days. Some people think of them as the villains of Magic, so you can come root for them to win, you can come root for them to lose. I don't know. It's up to you, but definitely a powerful team. You got Bill Sive, aka Will Thompson, Sam Bogue, and Michael Plummer. Michael, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is just top aided this weekend at SCG Con. Don't
Okay.
quote me on that, but I feel like he was in there. You got Team Bing Chilling, Stefan Schultz, aka Mental Misstep,
Yeah.
Johnny Gutman, aka Ginky MTG, and Tristan. I'm gonna butcher his last name, but Tristan MTG. It's another very powerful team. Team name featuring Luis Salvato, Javier Dominguez, and Sam Rolfe. That is, all these teams are
Congratulations,
good.
bro. That's a great team.
Yeah, it's definitely powerful. And then the last team, Team Steel Overseers, Matt Sperling, Cyrus Corman Gill, and Eric Virgo.
Ooh, I like that one.
Yeah, so, 4 very, very strong groups of players there.
Mhm. I'm excited to see how that pans out, and excited to see what decks they build. I mean, we're talking about the legacy format. I think the tier one. I think actually, we saw a list come out, a tier list from Osmandius, that had like Delver as the S tier option. But we've seen depth, we see 4 color control. A lot of those decks doing particularly well in this metagame right now. Modern right now, we're seeing a lot of Grixis Death Shadow as the top deck, but we're seeing a lot of shifting in that format as well. And I think Pioneer, people in the past, I'm going to say month, have really embraced that format, and we're seeing a lot of really interesting innovation coming out there. So that'll be really interesting to see those 4 teams try to attack it and try to attack that format and see what deck is going to put their team in the best position to win.
Yeah,
It sounds like we
I'm.
have the next round up, so let's try to move over there. It looks like we have Capriccio So on lands versus Slasher on Oops All Spells. We saw both these players obviously last round. Uh, Mapson, what do you expect in this kind of matchup here?
Well, as somebody who has played this matchup before, I definitely expect that Slasher is just going to win this game on turn 1. We have access to his hand right now, and did I see that hand wrong? Did that not have the turn? I must have looked at it wrong.
Looks like we're mulliganing, and so now we're here. I think this is a five card hand. This looks pretty solid to me, though. I think
Yeah, I
we're
mean, yeah, we're
we're missing
missing
black
a
mana.
we're missing a black source, but if you know Capricioso, anybody who has followed Dom's deck list in Legacy, he doesn't really play blue decks. So you can really kind of expect yourself to be safe if you have a hand that can produce a fast combo. So now at this point, Sasha's really just waiting to draw anything, and he's in a good spot.
We see
The
that
the
turn
biggest
one.
concern from Slasher's side is going to be crop rotation for Bajuka Bog, but
Oh,
that's
yeah.
one thing.
This could be Game Boys. We see that turn one Bethesda into exploration, play that Shelter Thicket for Capricious, but Slasher has a Lotus Petal into Dark Ritual, into a Turn Timber, into an Undercity Informer. We just see this game is over. Yeah, that was quick. So we're down about a minute on the clock here, and we are going to sideboarding. So if you're Dom after that, I don't even know what to call that. Quick game, let's say that. What are you trying to sideboard in here?
Yeah, so you're going to sideboard in your Endurances. You're going to sideboard in your Torpor Orbs. You're going to sideboard in your Leyline of the Voids. There is also an argument for bringing in Force of Vigor. I'm not sure if he will or not. So again, like we talked about in round one, Oops All Spells is a turn one combo deck that really needs to utilize its graveyard. So having stuff like Endurance and Leyline is kind of a give me, right? Like they stop you from being able to dread return your Thassa's Oracle, and then if you can't do that, you can't win, right? Like that part kind of speaks for itself. And the Force of Vigor, if they're on Chromox, you can tag a Chromox with the imprint trigger on the stack, so that can be good. It's obviously not great. And then Torpor Orb stops the Thassa's Oracle trigger, so those are definitely the cards I'm looking at from this side.
We see Oops All Spell by Slasher, aka Ryan Haddad. Uh, Pretty simple sideboard here. What are you trying to bring in if you are Slasher?
If you're on Slasher, you're probably bringing in some number of answers for Leyline of the Void, and you're probably bringing in the Leyline of Sanctities to stop Bajuka Bog. That being said, I definitely don't play a lot of Oops. One of my concerns with this deck is I think sideboarding is actually really tough because you don't want to dilute your combo too much. So I'm not sure how many things we'll actually bring in, but those are definitely the cards I would be looking at, or the ley lines of the fort.
Yeah, I think you're pretty spot on there. There's a critical mass of cards that if you take out too many, you're not going to be able to actually execute your game plan. Um, and things like Cabal Therapy is one of those cards that sometimes you need it, sometimes you don't. Obviously, land has the ability to interact and speed with the things like crop rotation and with endurance, but you definitely do need a couple copies in the deck. You can't just trim all of those. So it looks like we're back. Everyone is happy with their sideboards. Looks like we're debating on mulligans here. Slasher is looking at this hand. Not sure if they're happy with it though. Doesn't look particularly fast to me, but I guess it depends if they draw a black source, they have access. No, they throw it back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that hand was keepable.
Mm.
We are missing one of the cards, so maybe the last card.
So we do see a turn one Urza Saga from Dom facing down a Leyline of Sanctity. And we see a Lotus Petal come into play. We see a Chrome Mox come into play. Looks like that's going to be exiling a Burge from below. Access 2 mana. Let's cast our Cabal Ritual, and we're going to get a turn one Undercity Informer. We are 1 mana away from just putting our whole graveyard in, our whole deck into the graveyard, and it looks like we are doing that off of a Spirit Guide. Here comes the Goons, and match is over. That's it. We played
Yeah, that
two
was
complete turns.
something.
Mm-hmm. That is the advantage of a deck like that, though. I mean, obviously the games are quick, but if your opponent does not have the appropriate interaction at the appropriate time, the appropriate speed, the game's just over. And you can obviously see Oops All Spell can win on turn one that quickly.
Yeah. So, how do you personally feel about playing decks like that are just kind of all in?
I mean, I've actually played Oops All Spells in Legacy a couple times, couple leagues, probably like 4 or 5. I've done particularly well with it. I do appreciate the brutal efficiency of the deck and what it's trying to do, but I typically like to play decks that, if I'm going to be in that kind of vein, that have a good backup plan. And we did see in round one the ability to, just cast a 2/3, a 2/2, and beat down. That's usually not going to get there. So you really do need to be really disciplined with the mulliganing, and that's, I think, where the skill comes in for me. Is this a hand that is worth the risk, even if I can't combo out right now on turn one? Can I wait until turn two or turn three and still get there? I think it's a really good guess gameplay exercise, but I don't think I'd want to play that in a long tournament. We did see somebody top eight the SCG event with Oops All Spells, so it obviously does have legs, but in my mind, it always feels just like a coin flip a lot of times.
So I actually meant just more of like a personal enjoyment. Like, do you have fun doing that?
I mean, I do think running a league through it, I think it's a really fun deck to play. I mean, you get to do something explosive like that. Like, you just have it, and your opponent just has to sit there and just say, "Oh, no, I don't have it." I think that is kind of cool.
Yeah, I have not been a big fan of Oops. That being said, I played some Reanimator lately, and I don't know, I had a blast, which made me feel really guilty because I talk a lot of shit about Reanimator as a deck. And then I
Me
picked it
too.
up, I was like, oh, this is easy. Everyone just dies. Um, but like whenever I take those decks to like an actual event, I'm just like, this is miserable, right? Like I kill my opponent, and then I'm just like, what do I do for 40 minutes?
Yeah,
The answer is I don't know. But I do know for the next 40 minutes or some of that, I'm going to watch the backup match.
absolutely. So let's transition over. We see our free falling and IOK here. Looks like we are still turn 9 here. Crazy. It looks like we are maybe getting ground out by a wasteland or something like that. You do see um, a recruiter and a mom holding down the battlefield against an endurance, a sylvan library, and a Jason Mind Sculptor. Never a bad card if you are playing the 4-color control deck. We see the draws off of the Sylvan Library, including Mystic Sanctuary, but it definitely seems like the control deck is in full control here.
You know, somebody once told me that Jason the Mind Sculptor is better than all. And now I
Definitely
believe
true.
them.
As you should. Prismatic Ending is going to take care of the Mother of Runes. Looks like we're going to see a brainstorm here, drawing a number of brainstorms.
You know, I have to say, I have a lot of respect for free falling because I pretty sure I would have conceded at this point. Um,
Yep.
IOK just seems to have such a dominant board state here. Like they have so many cards in hand. They have a planeswalker going. They have a Sylvan Library, but they're still at 18 life rather. Like
Hmm.
all of that versus 2 lands and a recruiter of the guard.
Oh, jeez. Yeah,
I
ink.
just don't have the discipline.
I don't think I do either. In comes Uro here. I was going to put in looks like a Misty Rainforest. Gain some life, go to the graveyard, take a snooze. But I feel like we're going to see Uro again very soon. Income's Endurance for 3 damage, puts free falling down to 5 life.
I have to say, this is like the point where I wish Moto had an option to like reveal cards in your hand while you were playing. Right? Like they let you do it afterwards, and it always just kind of feels like a rub in. Look, still had all these, but like during the game, sometimes there reaches a point where I just kind of want to show my opponent, look, this is what I have. Do you honestly think you can beat this?
In comes the Skyclave Apparition, which would be pretty good to take care of some of these threats, but the Force of Will is going to take care of that and make sure that is not going to be an issue. And free falling, I think, has to just hold here. But we do see the Sword of Plowshare here take care of the recruiter, so that's not going to be a very good blocker. Back we go to IOK. Looks like we're fetching, hitting that Mystic Sanctuary that was on the top, clearing the top of the library here, putting back another Force of Will. See a couple copies of Force of Negation as well, keeping all of them. Why not? You're that far ahead. Play
Yeah,
a
I mean
land.
this is beautiful, right? Now you have 3 Force of Wills plus 3 blue cards, and you have your opponent dead in 2 turns. So
Yep,
like, no, like it actually like it lines up perfectly, right? Like
it
your
does.
opponent can have 3 cards in their hand they can cast next turn. They can't resolve any of them, and then you win.
Yeah. Here comes Flicker Wisp. Gets countered here.
So, important question that defines you as a person here. Do you hardcast it or do you exile?
I exile.
Same. Does that make us bad people?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah, probably. But I mean, they're tapped out. I think you could really do whatever you want here. And that's what IOK is doing right here, going and taking the win here. Okay, so we're going to sideboards. All right, so we're down a game. We are playing 80 card Death and Taxes. What are you bringing in here to try to turn this matchup?
Yeah, so I'm actually not bringing in too much. That game got really out of hand, but like I talked about earlier, Death and Taxes is really built to beat up unfair decks. Um, I am going to bring in some number of cards, right? Like I might bring in the Surgical Extractions to fight against Uro. I might bring in Council's Judgment to stop Planeswalkers. Um, but I'm really not trying to board too heavy. I'm really trying to let my main deck cards actually shine, right? Stuff like the Recruiter of the Guard is really strong, and Sanctum Prelate turning off their one drops. Like, again, games can get out of hand, but I do actually think you're fairly well set up for the matchup.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a bringing some amount of graveyard hate. I think that graveyard hate definitely does make sense, considering the Uro, but you definitely are in a good position already playing things like Spirit of the Labyrinth and Skycleave Apparition. How about if you're playing the 4-color control list? What are you bringing in there?
So I'm bringing in Questing Beast. Again, don't know that this is the matchup it's for. I just, give me the option, I'm bringing it in. I am, however, going to be much more confident when I bring in these Pyroclasms. There's also, an argument for bringing in Meltdown. I don't think I personally would, but being able to have Aether Vial is really nice, but it doesn't really hit much more than that, right? Like I don't know if Chita is going to be in post board or not. It's not tagging a Culture Complete. You could have it as an answer for Batterskull, but that doesn't feel good. So I'm really just high on the Pyroclasms.
I think there are some copies of Urza Saga, but I'm not sure if Michael's seen those yet.
That's true. I completely slipped my mind. I would probably actually bring them in then.
Okay. Yeah, but I do think this is another match I think that's really interesting because just the amount that it's pivoted over the years. When you're looking at the situation before you're in, right? I think that you are always just kind of considering the fact that eventually the game was going to end with the 4-color control list, taking over with whatever threat it's going to win with. Um, I feel like now with Urian, the deck can grind a lot better, and these games are really a lot more competitive, especially when you start adding in things like Skyclave Apparition into the deck.
One of the things worth noting is, you are taking out probably the 3 Force Negations, and you're not really bringing in any blue cards, and that always feels really awkward going because you're making your Force Wills a little bit worse. And that's not me saying to cut them, but it is just something I would definitely be mindful of post board, trying to keep blue cards in hand.
Yeah, because you do have the ability to pitch things like Ponder, Dress Down, Shark Typhoon, but I feel the Dress Downs are so good in this matchup. The ability to have a Shark here over the top is really nice. It looks like we have our openers pretty good for free falling, starting off on Plains into Aether Vial. Pretty solid start.
Yeah, unfortunately, this meltdown could definitely take care of it. Uh, it looks like IOK is choosing not to do that, which means that he's really going to get value taking out the Urza Saga constructs also.
So it looks like we're going into a turn to Urza Saga. I'm interested to see if we're going to see a plane cycling here of the Timeless Dragon, or if we're going to see that Soul Guide Lantern come in.
Timeless Dragon is such a cool pickup for this deck. I know people were really questioning it for a while. I've been impressed by it. I don't think I would have admitted that at first, but it has looked pretty good to me every time my opponents brought it back. What
Absolutely.
I'm excited to see this game is the combination of Beseju and Life from the Loam. It's something that a lot of legacy players have talked about. I haven't had the chance to see it in action yet. I'm very excited for that. I know it's something that I'm going to be doing a lot, um, just because I know who I am as a person. But I'm definitely excited to see this.
So end of turn free falling cycles their Soul Guide Lantern, draws up another Aether Vial. And we're going to see that Urza Saga tick up to 2. Here comes another Urza Saga potentially. Guess it depends on what we're seeing here. I guess what are your options here if you're free falling?
So you have a lot of options. It's really awkward because you want to make your land drop, but you really actually don't want that land drop to be an Ursa Saga here. There's the argument for cycling Timeless Dragon, but cycling with Timeless Dragon feels so bad because then you don't get to make your construct. As it stands, you're not going to get to make your construct anyways. There's an argument for just passing on the land. Honestly, nothing really feels great. It just feels like we really wanted to draw a land there.
Mm-hmm. Beseju thankfully does give you a land untapped, which is really good news. So
Oh
this
yeah,
does
that's
open up
true.
some options. So are you interested in making a construct then, or that recruiter look good to you?
Absolutely making the construct. I think might as well take the you might as well make the construct because you're not going to have the option later, right? So doing it now gives you more options down the line. You're kind of maximizing what you can do. Um,
Okay.
Also, totally forgot about Besager giving them a land, which makes me think that with that trigger on the stack, we should have hit the first Urza Saga.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that might have been better, but definitely up for debate. We do see Uro coming in here. That Mystic Sanctuary is going to be the land coming off of Ur's ability, putting up IOK from 20 to 23. Pathins turn back to free falling, but not before making a 2/2 construct here.
I have to say, IOK is showing like excellent patience with this meltdown.
Oh my gosh, I would have fired that off so long ago.
Yeah, but I mean, it's going to be pretty good here, right? And like, I guess this is the argument for hitting the Urza Saga that they did is, they're going to get their artifact off of this, and you get to pull up this artifact in addition to all the constructs. Like, this is actually really nice. Just like a clean 4/1.
And this does allow them to potentially go Life from the Loam, get back the Beseju, and cast a Meltdown for 1. That's a pretty mana efficient play, or they could, maybe even just cast Meltdown, hold up the Swords to Plowshare. There's a lot of different options here. So, Earth Saga going to the graveyard. It looks like our Pithing Needle is hitting Jason Mind Sculptor. I was actually debating if they were going to just name the Beseju with it.
I think it really depends on if you've seen Life from Loam in the deck or not. That being said, seeing Besager would make me assume that there's Life from the Loam, so
Hmm.
I don't know.
I would like to say a quick prayer for all the artifacts on free falling side of the board. It's probably going to be a brutal turn, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, this is I don't know if I can watch this.
Oh, I'm gonna stare at this. I'm very excited. We see the turn pass back to IOK. Draw for the turn as a wasteland here. Wasteland comes into play, and we're gonna see a meltdown for 1 mana, which is gonna clear 10 power worth of creatures. Get rid of 3 mana. I guess if you add in the activation of the constructs, that's 9 mana worth of activations of land activations. Before the meltdown occurs, though, we do see Recruit of the Guard coming into play off of an Aether Vial. I'm not even sure what you want to fetch up here, but we definitely are going to need something. I do wonder what your options are here. My immediate thought might be something like Sanctum Prelate. That is the name. So we get Sanctum Prelate. All the artifacts are off the battlefield right now. Wasteland's going to take care of that Aganjo. And we do see that Life from the Loam here get back both the Beseju and the Wasteland. That was a very good turn from IOK.
Yeah, I think Sanctum Prelate on 1 or 2 here is pretty good, honestly.
Mhm.
I think another card you could have considered is Lion Sash. Recruiter can find that, right? I'm not making that up.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we've been seeing that a lot in the modern Hammer Time deck, seeing Stoneforge Mistress get the Thatch, also getting Reality Chip. I don't think we're going to see that card too much in Legacy, but it is a very powerful card and makes Stoneforge Mystic an even better card than it already was.
I don't know. I think it was Caleb Durward tweeting about reality chip and Lion's Eye Diamond. That there's that's a pretty strong interaction.
Okay. Hmm. All right, turn goes back to IOK. Interested to see what we do. We got the Life Loam back. Source of Plowshare is going to hit the Stoneforge Mystic. Make sure we don't get that Cauldron Complete into play. That would be a complete disaster here. It looks like we don't have too much more to do if we're IOK, so it looks like the turn is coming back. Free for all takes the turn back. We see a Caracas as the draw. That does give us access to 3 mana, and in comes Sanctum Prelate. And you think we're naming one here?
I don't know. You might have to name two, knowing that they have play from the loam going on. Letting them just have that with Beseju doesn't feel the safest. Also, letting them have it with Wasteland, I don't know. It's rough. Like you need two Sanctum Prelates here.
But it seems like one with the name, which is going to prevent the Swords of Plowshare from removing it. But we do see the Sylvan Library as the draw for this turn, which is not a bad card coming in right now. Looks like we're going to have access to Beseju. Going to pay a little bit of mana, and we're going to get our Ura back from the graveyard. So fresh graveyard, fresh Ura, fresh us. Before we draw any more cards, let's use Solitude to get rid of that Uro.
Even though it feels good to have an answer, like Solitude as your answer for Uro just feels so bad, right? Like the Uro came down, it drew a card, it came back into play, it drew a second card, and now you have to give up 2 cards to answer it. Like that just does not feel great.
No, and the Ura's parting gift is making sure we draw a green source, able to play a Sylvan Library before passing the turn back. Free falling pays 3 mana to put a Urian into their hand. Maybe a little bit of beat down here, take IOK down from 25 to 22. And looks like the turn's going back to IOK now.
Yeah. So it feels like this game is really slipping away from free falling. They had a great early setup. That meltdown just did so much work. I think they're going to get buried under the Sylvan Library here.
Mm-hmm. Pay the full 8 life there. Let's fetch.
Dude, you always pay 8. Every chance I get, I pay 8.
Yeah, that is one of those things that you love to see your opponent's life total go down by 8 points, but you hate seeing them draw 2 cards. We see the Pyroclasm come down here, clear the battlefield. Wasteland's going to get rid of that Caracas. We see Life in the Loam getting back our fetch land and our Wasteland and our Flooded Strand. Ugh, this is a rough spot. Dahlia is the draw for the turn for Free Falling. Can't get hit by Force of Will right now, but it is going to be suspect when we're looking at an opponent who just has a lot of mana right now. The taxing effect is not going to be nearly as strong as we would like.
It really feels like this weird dynamic shift to see the control deck being the one wastelanding Death and Taxes out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also curious. Sorry, go ahead.
Just the ability to recur Wasteland through Life alone makes it so much more difficult, especially considering all the non-basics that Death and Taxes is playing now. Yeah, and they free-falling packs it in here. IRK's going to win this match 2-0. I think they put up a decent fight, but they definitely got buried under Uro and Sylvan Library. That was
I like the way they played that game. It was just, once that meltdown came down, it was, I think you just lost so much card advantage there. Like you just fell behind. Really not cool.
So we're in between matches right now. We're going to take a short break. But we will be back with round three and some more legacy action. Can't wait to see you when we get back. So, welcome back. We are here for the next round of Legacy Action. Match will be up relatively shortly. I'm Billy Mitchell, and I'm here with Michael Mapson. What do you think about the matches so far?
Yeah, they've been fun. I got to watch a bunch of Urza Saga, and that's one of my favorite new cards. So anytime that card's on screen, I'm not going to complain too much.
No. Yeah, Earth Saga has been up a lot. Bethesda is the one I'm actually the most interested in, just because it's a card that I'm kind of feeling out. It seems like it's way too powerful, and I think a lot of people are very much hyping it up. But it seemed pretty fair in a lot of the games that we saw. But still very, very strong. Had a really big effect, taking out a lot of problematic permanents.
Yeah, I mean, I even though I am one of the people who's pretty high on it, I feel like you were kind of over high on it.
Mhm.
Um, so, so I'm glad that you're getting to see it in action and realize, it's not going to be the end of Legacy as we know it, but just, a good card.
A good card. Definitely a good role player here. Matching it up with Life of the Loam just seems like such a powerful combination. Uh, But let's hop down to the next round to see this next match. I'm very excited. We get to see Capriccio on land versus IOK on four color control here. Um, and we saw this matchup a little bit earlier, right? So how does this matchup normally typically go here?
Yep, definitely saw it. As we said earlier, Lands is typically favored, and we did see Capricioso take it in three, but maybe things will go differently this time. Who knows?
So we do see a Sphere of Resistance here. Pretty powerful card, but that is going to get met with the Force of Negation from
I
IOK.
am actually really interested to see that. I think countering it is absolutely correct, but I'm surprised to see IOK use the Force of Negation rather than the Force of Will, particularly in this matchup. You typically want to use your Force of Negation on Life in the Line,
Mhm.
and having Force of Will is just so much worse. So I'm definitely surprised by that.
So I'm a big fan of this card. We see the combination of Yavri Maya allowing Dark Depths to make green mana, Exploration coming into play along with a Blast Zone. IOK is going to take the turn back. We're going to draw a couple cards here, paying 8 life, getting not only a Shark Typhoon, but a Life and Loam and an Endurance to make our
Yeah, I
land
have
draw.
to say, playing Blast Zone and then immediately playing a one drop feels a little bit awkward. Obviously, I understand both cards are good in this deck, but it's just one of those things you watch it happen. You're like, that doesn't seem right.
No. We do see the third counter going on to our Urza Saga. Before it leaves, we're going to go get another construct token and get our expedition map. In comes our construct token for 3. This is going to be kind of brutal. Let's see, our endurance comes in. Ugh. This is one of my least favorite things that happens when you play that Yavimaya. Your opponent only has 1 green up, but you gave them another green mana, and they're just going to cast that endurance.
Yeah, that can definitely be rough. I've been on both sides of it. I've definitely given my opponent green mana, and be like, you can't cast that, or oh, you
Mm,
can. But I've
mhm.
also like come off a turn earlier against Elsa, and they're like, where do you get the mana? I was like, your Yavimaya.
So IOK gets the turn back. Endurance in play. We're seeing a Source to Plowshare, a Ponder, and a Dress Down coming off of that. I wonder if they're going to pay for more life or for more cards here. Looks like we are paying 4, going down to 8. Notably, we do not have a land here from IOK.
Yeah, I definitely think I would have also paid for life. I really like casting this ponder, looking for a land, but also keeping the dress down as a way of dealing with this construct.
And we also noting that Capriccio does have the ability to make a dark depths or activate dark depths. Their thespian stage rather to make that into a depth to then make a 2020 merit lage. Um, doesn't seem like they're willing to go for it right now. Maybe wait for a little bit more protection.
Yeah, I mean, there's no need to go for it right now. There's no reason to think your opponent doesn't have Swords to Plowshares available, or even Prismatic Ending, right? Because the endurance is going to get in the way. So definitely don't want to leave it that exposed. Um, and you're not in a bad spot. You're not under any kind of pressure, and there's just a lot you can do to kind of advance your board state. I talked about this a lot earlier, but Thespian Stage plus Urza Saga is very powerful. And I think, especially in this matchup, it's just a much stronger plan because the control deck can so easily deal with Rage.
We see that Blaststone's going to take out our Sylvan Library. Also, while we're at it, let's just play Bajuka Ball, clear that graveyard, pass the turn back. Natural draw here for IOK is going to be a Source of Plowshare. It's not the worst draw. We see that 1/1 shark coming into play and attacking for 1. So Capriccio down to 19 here.
I have to say, even though I'm enjoying these matches, one of the most disappointing things so far was I thought in the previous match we might see Shark Typhoon get hardcast for a second.
Man,
And
the
I
dream.
Yeah, I love seeing that happen. I don't think we're likely to see it in this matchup.
So we do see Uro coming into play. We are find a ponder off of Uro. See if we can find another land here. I've got a Bethesda. Not terrible. Do you hold this land or do you play and try to add to your ability to get back Uro later?
I think you have to hold this Beseiju. There's so much going on your opponent's side that I think you just want more ways to interact with them. Beseiju gives you that.
We see a Thespian Stage copy Urza Saga. Let's get some counters on this. Notably, we usually see Urza Saga being targeted by Thespian Stage after it has the abilities. Here, it's actually going to start adding some counters here.
I really like the timing on that. Just getting it going as soon as possible. I think that's really strong. And then also the timing of it kind of incidentally works well against the fact that your opponent has Beseiju and Wasteland in their deck, right? You're not opening yourself up to a window where they can destroy the saga that you're targeting, and then you're just kind of not doing anything with that mana. So I really appreciate that timing.
We do see the Bethesda come down and take care of that Thespian Stage. So no more copying for you. In comes a Taiga. Misty Rainforest is the land for IOK, and it looks like we're going to get some lands back with our Life from the Loam. Get back our Bethesda, get back our Misty Rainforest. And it looks like we have the ability to hold up not only Fourth of Will, but double Source to Plowshare. It's not a bad position from IOK.
Yeah, things are definitely looking good from the control side. Seems basically like most angles are covered. Beseiju cleans up a lot of stuff. Dress Down cleans up the field. Force of Will stops anything too scary from happening. I'm definitely feeling good for my OK spot.
Absolutely. Here comes the activation of Urza Saga. Before it leaves the battlefield, we also do see it tutor up a Pithing Needle. Looks like we're actually naming. Looks like Bethesda.
Yeah, I think you have to.
Wasteland's going to take care of that untapped white and blue source. Get that out of here. And it looks like we're setting in some 4/4. It's a really powerful sequence going from the end of turn to the next turn. This main phase, really powerful attack. Let's see if we can get out of this.
Yeah, I mean, this looks really good, but in a second, the Stress Down is going to clear the board, and then Capricioso only has one card in hand. Like,
Mhm.
I actually think IOK is in a pretty commanding spot here.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. Yeah, that dress down has such a big impact on this game, and once again, the fact that instant speed plays really, really well against Urza Saga. So it looks like we are paying 4 mana. It looks like we're going to get a certain Titan back from the graveyard. Here comes our Uro. We'll keep that prismatic ending in the graveyard. Put a Misty Rainforest into play. It gives us the option to play our Swords of Plowshare if we'd like to. There's a Versace, and now we have access to Dress Down. This game flipped very, very quickly.
Um,
Yep, and Capriccio just packs it up. Kind of knows the writing's on the wall.
yeah, but I will say if you're Dom here, your opponent was able to take the first game in the previous match, so maybe not too worried knowing that Dom was able to take both post board games last time.
So, looking back at the 4 color control list, what are you interested in bringing in versus a Lance opponent?
Yeah, so I mean, we've already seen this once. I expect us to board more or less the same, but for any viewers who weren't here the first time, we're going to see the meltdowns come in. We're going to see the surgicals come in. Unclear what got cut, but that's definitely what we're bringing in.
I mean, debating maybe like Force of Will or something like that.
I
Uh,
so if I'm the control player, I actually shave on my spot removal. Right, like you need some amount of it to keep the Urza Saga stuff in check, but at this point, you're pretty comfortable saying your opponent's not on Elvish Reclaimer,
yeah.
so I don't think you need a lot.
What about if you're Dom here? What are you trying to bring in?
If you're Dom, you're bringing in your endurances. We did see Dom win previously with Punishing Fires, so I don't know if the second Punishing Fire is coming in or if it's just one. I wouldn't be stunned either way, honestly. And we're seeing Power Blast come in, and then definitely Choke. Choke is absurd.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, we definitely do see some copies of things like Savannah, right, coming out of the 4 color control list, but there's a lot of tropical islands, there's a lot of tundras, there's a Mystic Sanctuary, there's plenty of islands to get choked. All right. Looks like we have a good start from Dom here. That turn 1 Taiga into Gamble. I'm assuming we're going to be getting a certain 2 mana sorcery in terms of Life from the Loam if we're Dom.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say without seeing Dom's hand, but that is incredibly likely. Definitely think um, there's still an argument for countering the gamble, but you probably let it resolve and then just try to go ahead and force a negation a life from the loam.
So Ponder allows us to see a pretty good 3 cards here. Um, Definitely a land. Looks like we're going to take the Surgical Extraction for right now. Capriccio tries to play a Exploration, but that is going to be met with a Force of Will.
Wow,
And there's no follow-up land.
that's huge.
Oh, in comes the Flooded Strand for IOK. Let's see if Capriccio
Wow,
can find a
that's
land.
also really surprising to me. If you are on if you're IOK there, I don't know how you don't wasteland them.
Yeah, you have 1 land. Let's get rid of that thing. Instead, in comes the Brainstorm at the end of the turn. Interested to see what you put back here. I'd imagine both Wastelands, okay. I think you're going to play the Wasteland this turn anyways, right? Oh, wow. Okay.
He is just not interested in getting rid of this Taiga. So I mean, I guess there is an argument that Taiga is one of the weaker lands in their deck. Save your answers for something that matters.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe it's greedy to hit. I definitely see this argument. Um, that being said, I'm a greedy person. Also, I don't want them doing something like playing a life from the low and getting stuff back. I mean, I don't think it super likely to come up anyways because of the force negation and force of will. But yeah, I'm definitely surprised to not see the wasteland there.
And it looks like IRK just wins the match there. I'm interested to see what Dom's hand was because I'm not sure you keep that hand. I guess you're dependent. It looks like the gamble actually did discard a land, so maybe you have the life and the loam, and you're depending on being able to cast it off the two land, and the gamble really was a gamble.
Maybe. I also didn't look at the number of lands he actually, or the number of cards he had in hand. I don't know if you caught that, but it's possible
Not
that was mulligan also.
Yeah, it's very possible. Either way, it was an interesting couple of matches there. Did not The last one obviously did not go the way I expected. Yeah, I expected Lambs to be able to put up a little bit more of a fight there, but definitely interesting to see the power just of the Sylvan Library Uro engine. The fact you can just draw so many cards, and obviously Uro allows you to gain life, which allows you to draw more cards, but Uro also lets you draw cards. So now you're just like, there were situations in that previous match where we saw IOK had like 10 cards in hand and had to discard. Um, it's just a really powerful engine we're seeing in the legacy format right now.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of Sylvan Library plus Hero for, I mean, basically as long as the card has been out. I actually remember playing. I'm gonna pat myself on the back here. I remember the first week Uro was out playing it in a deck, and people were on like this control pile, but people didn't realize Uro was going to be good week one. And I just remember showing up with it, and people were like, "Why are you playing that?" I was like, "I don't know, man. Seems good. Like, draws cards, pair it with Sylvan Library. That seems unbeatable." And people were like, "Nah, that can't be good." And then I just like easily won this event. I was like, I don't know. It felt good every time I did it. Like, the card has been powerful with Sylvan Library from the second it came out. I don't see that really going anywhere. Um, we don't always see it get abused, but like over time, we saw decks like for forever ago. We saw Pokepile playing it. Rug Delver was playing it for a bit. Yeah,
You know?
it's Snowco. Like it's just been there, and I don't think it's talked about enough how strong of an engine it is.
Yeah, and now it's actually, believe it or not, somehow even stronger because you get to play Bazasia with it. Obviously, the ability to explore does not seem like a really great ability. I think in the abstract, but the fact that it actually comes into play, puts another land into play, like we kind of saw, we had the opportunity for it at least. It is a legendary permanent, so it does allow your Bazasia to cost one less. You put it in a green source, you can just Bazasia off of that, and suddenly your 1 mana or 3 mana explore, draw three, or draw one, gain three. Now it becomes also disenchant plus. Unbelievable. So let's actually move to our finals now. We're going to see Slasher21, our champion, who's been steamrolling through this, playing against IOK.
Yeah,
I really like Slasher's hand here. This looks like a very, very quick kill. Obviously, IOK does have a little bit of interaction here, so let's see if Slasher goes forward or if they try to, you know,
I mean,
prepare
if you're
for.
Slasher here, like I think you have to go for it. If you're not going for it with this, like, why are you playing this deck? Right? You have the turn one kill with Pact and Negation backup. Your opponent is. It's been a while since I've looked at the numbers, but I think 40% have a Force of Will. They also have Force and Negation, so I guess those numbers go up. But like, what are the odds they have both and two blue cards? Not good.
Not
You know?
good. We see them going for it. Here goes the Wild Canter into the Dark Ritual, into the Cabal Ritual, into the Undercity Informer. We have the 1 mana. Let's activate. Let's target ourselves. Here we go. Here's our graveyard hitting the bin here. And we still have that pact here. Interesting. I expected that Force of Negation to hit something at some point, but I guess there's really no good targets at this point. Here comes it. Knocking me, bud. Knocking
So
me over.
there's
Knocking me up.
definitely a strong argument for hitting whatever ritual was going to give them enough mana to go off.
Hmm.
I actually think that's the correct thing to hit because once you let the ability resolve and all the cards go to the graveyard, they can just Cabal Therapy you twice and take Force of Will and Force Negation.
Yep. Yeah, I was expecting to see it on the Cabal Ritual. I mean, you go from 3 mana down to one, and if you can't really do much off of 3 cards and 1 mana. So, but here we are. Cabal Ritual is going to name Kid on the first try, Force of Negation. We see another Cabal Ritual here, but I don't think you even need it. I think we're just going to go get that Dread Return, bring back our creature, and I think we're going to end this game pretty quickly. There we go. Turn one, no land, no draws. Just let's get it over with. Um, well, 4 color control is in the back foot here. What do you bring in here if you're trying to pull this one out?
Okay, so hear me out.
Okay,
Questing Beast gets past Narcomoeba.
true. Fact. Yeah.
Um, in actuality, I'm bringing in Flusterstorm. That one's kind of an obvious one. Um, I'm bringing in Surgical Extraction. I think that one also kind of speaks for itself. Cutting swords to plow, cutting swords to plowshares and prismatic endings. Um, I might actually bring in the Pyroblast, right? Because your swords and prismatic endings are so dead. I don't think the Pyroblast and Red Blast are good either, but they do counter. Like the only thing swords is hitting is like the Narcomoeba with the other Narcomoebas on the stack, and Reb/Pyro gives you that same out to like maybe get lucky there. It also counters pact negation, and I think
Okay.
that can win you the game, right? Because like a lot of times they go all in and then they have the pact to back it up, and you just put a stop to that.
If you are playing Oops All Spells, what are you trying to bring in here?
If you're on Oops, you're bringing in the Xantid Swarm, which if you have knowledge of the matchup, the fact that Xantid Swarm's coming in definitely means that maybe you don't actually cut the swords to plowshares and prismatic endings. Um, but yeah, I'm bringing in Xantid Swarm, and I mean, I really think that's it.
I think so too. I always like the pressure that Zendikar puts on the matchup because once again, you can't get all your thought removal because it could happen. But also, if the Zendikar isn't there and you just have a bunch of Swords to Plowshares hanging out, or God forbid, Prismatic Ending, that card just does nothing. And now that could have been depending on the matchup, right? A discard spell, a counter spell, something that's actually going to affect the game. So, uh, really, a lot of tension on Zendikar, which I think is going to be a factor here. Let's see. Slasher's hand looks pretty good. Let's see if IOK is something competitive. We have a keep, force negation, blue card, surgical extraction. I like that.
So
Slasher's. Oh, go ahead.
IOK's hand is good, but it's also not at the same time, right? Like one of the issues here is your deck is just so slow. And I know this is something you and I have talked about. Like when you play against these combo decks, people bring in all these answers. These answers are great. Like I love having surgical here. I love having force negation here. But there's no pressure. And given enough time, like Slasher can easily just draw ways to beat that. And like, here we're seeing this Cabal therapy, and this if he hits with this Cabal therapy, the game can just end.
It seems like we named Force of Will, so we're actually gonna miss here. So now we're in an interesting spot. What do? You have 2 mana floating. It looks like we're gonna be casting in.
He's gonna cast an Elder Spirit Guide and flashback Cabal therapy, I believe.
Mhm. In comes Elvish Spirit Guide. Looks like it's probably gonna hit the bin to that. Maybe it doesn't. No, we're gonna keep that 2/2 in play.
I mean, that makes sense, right? 'Cause one of the issues is if you target the surgical here, then I guess you're gonna struggle to beat the force negation. Well, are you really struggling to beat it if you need some help? I don't but that's it. Ugh.
Let's see. We have the Passeju here. It's gonna come into play. This is gonna be interesting. I wonder if you're Sasha, if you attack into potentially an endurance from your opponent.
I
Slasher
mean, I think
draws
he's
a. Oh,
committed to doing that at this point.
so in comes the Elvish Spirit Guide for 2. In comes the endurance. Yep. And Slasher concedes there. Yeah, I think you just have to concede and move on. I think we get a better chance in that game, just moving on to game 3. So let's see what happens there. Do you make any changes if you're either player between games?
Um, I don't think I saw anything that is likely to make me change anything up. Going back to that last turn though,
Mhm.
I think it's actually interesting the number of decisions that IOK actually had there, right? Like, obviously we chose to go with endurance play. There's also a possibility to just play the Beseiju and blow up Slasher's only mana source.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's better or worse, but just one more option. Also, could have played the Tundra to keep the Beseiju in hand. That still holds up force negation, like hard casting it too,
Yeah.
which is
It's meaningful.
it's just interesting how many different options there were there.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's the thing that's interesting that oops, like there are so many things that seem to like incidentally be good against you. Slasher is going to be on the play here. We see Undercity Informer, Chrome Mox, Xanted Swarm, we see Narcomoeba. We do see a DFC Black Source, Lotus Petal, and a second Swarm here. I okay with the Wasteland, Ponder, Surgical Extraction, Library. Oh, Lustrous Storm, Brainstorm, and a Tundra. I like both these hands.
Now
Um,
it's really rough watching IOK draw a starting hand that actually had the Swords to Plowshares for these Xantid Swarms and getting rid of it.
yeah. We see the Chrome Mox coming. It's gonna get rid of one swarm, and like all bugs, that's gonna be the harbinger for the second one. In comes this DFC here, and pass the turn back to IOK. Draw for the turn to the Ponder. We're gonna go turn one Tundra into Ponder, and try to find some interaction here. Make sure we don't die on turn two. Once again, we have access to both the hand, but we do not know, or IOK does not know if they are dead on turn two or not. Draw for Slasher is a pact of negation. We do have access to a
So
couple things now.
IOK is clicking on their Wasteland a bunch. I'm wondering if they're trying to signal like, I should have played this, right? Because that's definitely something to consider. Your opponent played the land out tapped.
Mm.
It definitely could have been possible that you just want to take them off mana. Like they're getting set up to go through any kind of interaction.
Here comes in the Xanted Swarm.
And
Where's
here they're getting the chance to play the Balance Rate Spy. They wouldn't have gotten that chance if we had just wastelanded there. And obviously, IOK doesn't know that there's a Balance Rate Spy in hand, but
oh, the draw for the turn being that source to plowshare, that is going to line up pretty well against that Undercity Informer right now.
so here's the question though: like, are we actually going to target the Informer, or do you target the Xantid Swarm? I think from that spot, I honestly might have targeted the Xantid Swarm.
I mean, debatable. I think it's a difficult choice. I think you have to get rid of the threat there. Well, I mean, the immediate threat, in which in my mind is the Informer. We do see.
So I totally get that argument, but I feel like based off of your hand, you can actually just stop them if they try to go off, right? Like you have the surgical to deal with the narcomoebas, you have the fluster to deal with like any kind of ramp or like or a cabal therapy that might rip it out of your hand. Like I actually, I don't know. As it stands, I okay one,
Mhm.
but yeah, I'm not convinced that I would have actually hit the spy there. Maybe I'm wrong. I could definitely be wrong.
So if you are watching, joining us, thank you for jumping in. You just saw that we had Slasher being taken down a little bit. Uh, Thankfully, this is a double elimination event. That was Slasher's first loss here, so we actually get the rubber match here. We're going to see a third match between these two decks, Slasher and IOK. Uh, let's see. It looks like IOK is going to be on the play here. Pretty solid hand. Now they both aware what the matchup is. We do see a flooded strand come into play. Looks like IOK does have some protection in a fourth negation with the blue card. Looks like Slasher has a very solid hand here. We're gonna go DFC into Thought Thief, which is gonna do a lot of damage.
Slasher's hand is so funny to me here. I think this is like the most resilient hand I've ever seen Oops draw.
So that Brainstorm they're going to cast is going to look like protect some of the spells. They draw a tropical island, a wasteland, and a fourth negation here. Look like we're going to put 2 cards back on top, both of our white cards, interestingly enough. There goes back our prismatic ending and our swords to plowshare. They're going to take the brainstorm here and look to pass the turn back to IOK. Draws that prismatic ending we saw before. Wasteland's going to take care of that DFC. Pass the turn back. If you had to judge right now, who do you think has the advantage here?
Well, I still think Slasher is kind of favored, right? Like having double force negation is really good. Putting him on no lands is really good. But at the end of the day, like we talked about, IOK still doesn't have any kind of pressure. Slasher needs very little to actually go off from here. And Slasher has double pact negation to cover the double force negation. And that's assuming that IOK even finds a second blue card. I think it is very likely that Slasher is able to go off. I will say though, the hand is kind of awkward because he does have Dread Return and Thassa's Oracle in hand. So if he draws, he has to Cabal Therapy himself. So he needs to find a permanent black source. So that might add some time. I don't know.
The other thing to talk about this hand too is you have to therapy yourself twice. However, one
Right,
of the
that's
therapies
why
is
I
already
mean,
in
he
hand.
needs to find the permanent black source. He can't just hit one Cabal Therapy. He has to do it twice.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Draw for the turn is a bridge from
Ugh.
below. Not a great draw.
He
For the benefit.
is he's really drawing about the worst possible.
We do see brainstorm and a turn from IOK, putting back 2 white removal spells that are going to be shuffled away with the Misty Rainforest. IOK draws an Uro for the turn. Not a bad draw, but we're going to see that stay in the hand for right now.
So there's
Draw.
actually a lot of interesting stuff happening here, right? Like Slasher's gotten to the point where he gets to discard to max hand size, and that's actually really good. That being said, IOK's hand is coming together really well. He gets to do the end of turn dress down into Burrow trick. So I was saying he doesn't have a clock, and now all of a sudden he has a great clock. Not only does he have such a good clock, he could hard cast Force Negation if he needs to. He has Force of Will plus plenty of blue cards to back it up. And he can also just play Dress Down to be a Thassa's Oracle. So you asked me, it felt like only a minute ago, and I said Slasher was favored, but if we had an advantage meter, it would be wildly in IOK's side right now.
I would have to agree. Turn goes back to IOK. We see that Uro coming in and attacking. Draw for the activation is a Flooded Strand. It's a great draw. Pass the turn back. Double Force of Negation, Force of Will, Dress Down in hand. A lot of protection. But Slasher does have a pretty good hand right now. We still see the Simian Spirit Guide and the Lotus Petal. We really are 1 or 2 cards away from having a really interesting back and forth here. In comes Uro again. Draw is Beseju. That's actually a really brutal draw.
It's actually absurd how much better IOK is drawing than Slasher.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of these decks, though, right? IOK's deck is full of good cards, and Slasher's deck is kind of full of awkward combo pieces. I mean, and when you draw them properly, it is arguably the most powerful deck in the format. But there's a lot of draws that just don't come together, and we're really seeing that fail state here.
IOK is a little confused. Once again, Beseju does cost less to activate for each legendary creature you control. Uro is a legendary creature, so it does not cost 2 to activate, only 1 green, making that card a little bit better than it already was. Here comes Lotus Petal for Slasher. We're going to see Force of Negation being countered by Pact of Negation. A lot of negations here. Here comes another Force of Negation. Here comes another pact of negation. Finally, we see the Lotus Petal come into play. We're going to create 3 black mana with Dark Ritual, and that unfortunately is going to be met with a Force of Will. No more counter spells here, and we're going to see the concession from Slasher on to the next game. That had a lot more back and forth than I was expecting.
Yeah, I mean, so Slasher really did keep a slower hand, so it was kind of set up to be back and forth. Um, that being said, it definitely was aided by the fact that Slasher just drew so much worse than IOK. But yeah, I mean, it came down to a pretty interesting final turn there.
Absolutely. Talked about this briefly a little bit ago. We're expecting just the same Swerve to come in here, cutting some number of cards. Once again, this deck is very difficult to sideboard with. You need a critical mass of these really important spells to have explosive turns and to be resilient. However, boarding in a card like Vengeance Swarm, which doesn't directly help your combo, is going to kind of weaken your deck overall. We also see the 4-color control list. Like Mapson mentioned before, we expect your Flusterstorms, expect your Red Elemental Blast is not the worst here. Surgical Extraction, great in this matchup. And obviously, you do have things like Endurance already in the main deck, and the Force of Wills and the Force of Negations. You're not in a terrible situation if you can get through the first Pact of Negation or so. So I'm excited to see this next game here. And notably, we're going to see Slasher on the play with Oops All Spells.
Yeah, being on the play in this matchup is, really big. Being on the play in any matchup is really big, but not giving your opponent time when you're the deck that kills on turn 1, obviously great.
Yeah. We see Slasher Mulligan looking at it, looking for a better 6-card hand. IOK seems like they are pretty content to keep Force of Will, Blue Card, and Uro, as well as 4 lands and a Sylvan Library. Slasher looks like they are going to be keeping this hand, which looks pretty explosive. We've got a Lotus Petal into Dark Ritual. We have a Undercity Informer. We're going to see that try to be countered by a Force of Will. However, that Pact of Negation is going to counter that Force of Will. Here comes a Elvish Spirit Guide. Make 1 mana. Activate. Let's actually mill ourselves. Mill the whole library. Do we need anything? Let's get our Narcomoebas out. Here comes 1, 2, 3, 4. I expect a Cabal Therapy to see if the coast is clear. Probably name Surgical Extraction if I had to make a
Well,
guess.
you're not naming Surgical Extraction because Surgical would have already been cast.
That's probably true. So probably just name Abandoned Hope. What are we naming? I don't think it particularly matters here. Let's go and get our Dread Return, bring back Arthas's Oracle, and end this game and move on to game number 3. Oh, man, that was a hand.
We
And
didn't
that
even
is,
get up to Storm 10. I feel cheated.
I mean, and that's a nice thing too, right? Like, you are not playing a lot of spells. They didn't have to play anything super crazy outside of their hand. But having access to that full graveyard, it is difficult once they get the graveyard, the library into the graveyard to stop them. Obviously, something like a Surgical Extraction there would have been really brutal. We also Endurance be really good. But that wasn't the situation.
Yeah. So about to have the third game. So this is the final game, right?
Absolutely. Let's see.
Excited to see how
IOK.
this goes.
Yeah, IOK is going to be on the play. We see a Force of Negation from them. Slasher has a pretty good hand here on a mulligan to 6. They have a Manosaurus as well as a Dark Ritual. Here comes the Ponder on turn 1 from IOK. We see Life the Loam, Flooded Strand, and Uro. Looks like we're going to shuffle, find a Mystic Sanctuary, and pass the turn to Slasher. Slasher draws a Chrome Mox for the turn. Looks like we're going to start off with a Moxen. We're
I
going
think Chromox is actually an excellent draw here. I mean, the draw we really wanted to see if we're Slasher fans is Pact Negation, but Chromox is quite strong here.
Absolutely. Here comes the Dark Ritual. that's going to be met with a Force of Negation, which actually is not terrible news if you're a slasher, right?
No, yeah, I mean, obviously it's not what you want to see, but still have two more two more creatures that will let you go off in hand.
Mhm.
You have another Turn Timber Symbiosis as a land. I will say, I I don't love that we played the Chromax out. Uh, what I thought we were going to do was wait if we were going to play the black land, right? Just because we might have needed to exile a black card to Chromax so that we could actually cast these spells. As it stands, Lotus Petal off the top is going to fix that issue.
So that Wasteland was very good. However, I think the Lotus Petal makes up for it. We do see the Bezachu come into play, make a Sylvan Library pass a turn back. Second Lotus Petal is actually a very solid draw here. That's going to allow Slasher to play this Undercity Informer. Here comes a Lotus Petal. This is going to be met with a Force of Negation. And this is a very small reprieve because we are going to, be able to see an activation from Undercity Informer if IOK does not find something off of the Sylvan Library. First draw is a
Oof.
Tundra. We see another Tundra. We see a Misty Rainforest. That's not going to be good enough here.
Okay, I really respect this. The match is probably over here, but IOK not conceding here is really good because this, Slasher has to think about it. I mean, again, this is one of those situations where like you registered your deck to do this, right? Like if you're not going to go for it here, you probably shouldn't be playing this deck. But I do like IOK not conceding, especially this is the finals. Make them think, make them work for it.
Absolutely. But we do see Slasher go for the activation of Undercity Informer, target themselves, mill their whole library. Here comes the army of Narcomoebas. We see a Cabal Therapy. Let's make sure the coast is clear before we try to bring back our Thassa Oracle. Cabal Therapy is probably going to name... I don't think it matters at this point, right?
I don't know. I would name you are already dead, personally.
Yeah, absolutely. New addition out of the last set. We do see the Fourth of Will being the name here. That's going to reveal a Mystic Sanctuary, 2 Tundras. Not enough interaction. Here comes the, if I had to make a guess, Dread Return, sacrificing 3 creatures, getting 2 more zombies, not that we need those, bringing back our Thassa's Oracle, and ending the game. Slasher 21 is our champion. Fantastic run by them, and just excellent play overall.
Yeah, that was good. I mean, Slasher's been on this deck for a while now, and every time you see him play it, he knows the deck in and out. Like he definitely gets that just where he needs to. Yeah, that was a good display.
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot recently, right? We've talked about these kind of control combo players, rather, who have this deck that does one thing particularly well, and they sometimes run into some kind of interaction, whether it is a counter spell or it's some kind of graveyard removal spell, a containment priest. It could be a Leyline of the Void, Force of Negation, whatever it is, and they say, "Oh, I just can't win. The game's over." Okay. And the thing that really impressed me with Slasher's play this time was we saw that one game where they had no graveyard. They had facing a Leyline of the Void. And you know what? Fine. I'm going to play some bears. Let's battle. I can beat a mom here. Good job. Good job blocking with that Flicker with. I'm going to get in, take 6, take 4, take 2. Can't cast their surgical extractions now. Game's over. That was really the thing you see from these, people who are very proficient in those kind of decks, the ability to pivot when their A plan is not available and still be able to close out games. Super impressive play.
Yeah, that was very impressive. Yeah, so I don't know if we have much more to do here.
Nope. All right. I think I'm here now. I think everyone can hear me, right? All right. You guys are great. I'm actually going to wrap up the stream right now. So, guys, real quick, if you guys... Well, not even being replaced. I have to go grocery shopping. So you guys are, yeah, that's it. But if you guys wanted to plug your social medias or where people can find you, because I was reading the chat the whole time. You had a lot of support here from a lot of people. So yeah, where can people find you and what you guys up to?
Mapson, you go first.
So Anurag was nice enough to put our descriptions down below. I'm pointing way in the wrong spot. But you can find me at Expedition Map. You can find him at Bad Luck Bandit. If you want to find us together, you can find us at Deps_pod. We produce a podcast where we talk about Modern and Legacy. It comes out every Wednesday. So, there was a new one this morning featuring one of the SCG Con top 8 competitors talking about Food Chain. Next week, we're going to have the SCG Con Legacy winner, Ezra, on to talk about Green White Depths and his build and his run. So, yeah, would definitely appreciate any listeners, any follows.
Awesome.
Yeah, also, one more for we don't get the opportunity to commentate very often. So if you do have any feedback or if you enjoyed seeing us, please message us on Twitter. Once again, your support would mean a lot, but also giving us some constructive feedback so we can improve and hopefully get another opportunity to do this would be absolutely fantastic.
Nope. All right. Yeah. And that was kind of the purpose of this, just to, provide more commentary opportunities for people who are, interested and serious about it. You guys did a great job. And on that note, I'm going to call it for today. But let's talk later, everybody. Thanks for watching. Bye.